blah blah. Feels really lonely here just by myself. But we're going to continue on because this is actually a very important episode I want to talk about. Okay, so I know that we didn't cover episode 19, season 2, episode 19 of My Hero, and that was kind of a filler thing about everyone else's internships. Basically, what you got out of it was just all different perspectives of like what a hero goes through depending on their I guess their path, their career path. And that was really cool. I think Sue was definitely the biggest highlight because it was a real life scenario where like there was a dangerous criminal involved and everything like that. So yeah, that's pretty much like the short, sweet, simple version of it. I like the episode. So moving on to the next episode, episode 20. This particular episode not only acts as a transitional period onto the next arc, if you will, but also works as more lore building, specifically about the also mysterious power One for All. Just kind of starting off the episode, it's everyone in class, or at least, actually, you know what? I'm gonna just like quickly scan through everything right here. So it kind of just starts with everyone just kind of leaving their internships, like Deku being like the highlight here. What I liked about this exchange between him and Gran Torino was at the very end, it was just like Gran Torino's asking like, "Who are you?" And then Midoriya's just like saying his name, but then he realizes like, "Oh, it's not. What's your hero name?" Deku. So it's cool, nice. It's cool to see his name being more acknowledged. So he's going to go into the hero spotlight as Deku instead of anything that he could build up later on, which is really cool. So now we're transitioning to like what's going on in the class now that everyone's going back. Pretty much everyone's talking about like how their internships have been. Bakugo had a little bit of his like is combed over, like still there until like he got made fun of, and then he got enraged and popped his hair back into place. Also, Uraka is also like in woke form right now, so it's best just not to talk to her. So it seems like the first day of class, like after the internships, and we're just going straight into this training course where it's all these people in groups of 5 or so. They go about through this entire like looks like an oil rig actually. And they're supposed to meet up at a certain point in which they're to rescue whoever it would be, which would just be All Might for this particular example. And so you see the first group, it comprises of like Lita, Sero, you know, tape user. What was the guy's name? Was it Monkey Tail? Was it seriously just Monkey Tail? We're just gonna go with that. And there's a bunch of other ones too. Oh yeah, Pinky. Yeah, Pinky is also involved in this one. And Deku. Everyone's going through the course, like just taking advantage of their quirks and everything like that. Everyone who's sitting on the sidelines are kind of questioning like, who's gonna win? And a lot of people are just like, I'm not sure about Midoriya because like, doesn't he like break easily? And then boom, here comes the 5%. No one's expecting it, and everyone just like in awe. Even Bakugo is like kind of not mesmerized, but he sees like how his movements are, Deku's movements are just like his, and now I see Bakugo like further going down this like little pit of just like, I was just so useless when I was doing my internship, and I see now Deku's just like, you know, now another league of his own now. It's infuriating to him, and I think that's going to build up for the next couple of chapters, or not chapters because it's not manga, but episodes. This is actually a really cool like little scene too, because though Deku has the has the edge over everyone here, he still has no complete control over his quirk in the sense that, okay, sure, he's trying to maintain the 5%, but he doesn't have a landing strategy. Promise that's not a Ruby reference. So yeah, despite his best efforts, Midoriya didn't win the entire race course, so that's how it is. But All Might was still very impressed because this is the first time he actually seen Deku use All for One, just a portion of it, without actually breaking. So now he has a little bit more control, and now All Might feels that it is his right to tell him about a little bit more of the origins, and this is where the lore building comes in. I'll be completely honest, I needed to do some background research like after the episode because I needed to just make sure I had a full understanding of like what the quirk does before I wanted to like kind of tell you guys about like what it's all about, because this is pretty much what we know so far. It's so far the most mysterious quirk that we know of but don't know much of either. In the past, when quirks were starting to come in, it's during a time in which society was starting to crumble because, you know, people are now becoming differentiated. They're now going beyond laws and rules and such because they now have something that distinctly describes them and gives them more what's the word? Essentially, they have agency is what I was trying to say. They have more agency like over like society, and so society was crumbling apart because of that. And one particular person with a quirk was able to unify a lot of people, and this guy ended up being the big bad dude, and he had kind of like the antithesis of One for All, which was dubbed All for One. So just think about the three musketeers, All for One and One for All. All for One had this power. It was different from One for All, and we'll talk more about One for All later. All for One had the ability to steal people's quirks, make them his own, and also transfer those powers onto people, whether by force or by consent. Which actually, just kind of breaking away from that, All Might actually had brought up the fact that even though that Stain actually took a bit of like Deku's blood, that doesn't mean he has all One for All. So to transfer One for All essentially means you need to have the user totally okay with giving his power to someone. So going back to All for One, the power to steal people's abilities, keep them as their own, use it as their own, and then transfer the powers over to someone else. And we're thinking transfer as in they give their quirk to them or a quirk to them. So the person who has All for One, if they give like a quirk to a person, they don't have that quirk anymore. It turns out that this person who had All for One in the past has sickly young brother, and who was quirkless essentially. So the older brother, the one with All for One, had transferred a quirk which was stockpile power to his younger brother to just make him stronger. Or we don't really know the actual like intentions of that, whether it be kind or he just forced it upon him. But what no one had actually expected out of this was that the seemingly quirkless younger brother actually wasn't quirkless. Instead, he had a rather useless ability as a quirk to actually pass down quirks to other people. So it's kind of a variation of All for One. And I guess that kind of makes sense because they are siblings. So siblings would naturally have like quirks if they are passed down to like parents or whatever, mutations and whatnot. So by giving someone the stockpile power quirk in addition to their unknown but ever so present transferable quirk power, essentially create the mutation One for All, and that's the one that's been passed down through generations and reached All Might and now has Deku as the next person to hold the torch. So now we have two separate quirks. We have one All for One, and now we have One for All, and it's essentially destiny for these two quirks, whoever holds the quirk, to clash together, because All for One stands for the evil and One for All stands for like the belief to stop All for One through generations. All Might informs Deku that because he has One for All, he's probably going to have to face this guy at some point later down the line. Deku's all for it, and that's totally fine. But the fact is that All Might was trying to tell Deku something, but he couldn't get the words out of it. Instead, he just tells him thank you, and then they both part ways, and that's it. What was really big that All Might wanted to tell Midoriya was he wasn't going to be there for the rest of his life. By the way he says it, he's gonna die soon, and that's kind of the suckish part about it, because sure, like All Might could still use like One for All, but for how long though? So he can't always be there to support Deku. So it's tough, because I can understand like how he doesn't want to tell him this quite, because he doesn't want to pressure Deku to do anything like irrational. He's still a kid, so it's kind of tough. But at the same time, he now shoulders the responsibility of the future of the world, because as far as I can see, All for One is probably the most broken quirk out there. It seems that, well, I actually haven't seen too much of it, but the person who wields All for One doesn't seem to be also burdened by like all these multiple quirks that he's holding. Although at the very end of the entire episode, you do see who is All for One, and he's pretty messed up, dude, but he's still alive. So considering like how long he's been like surviving for, it's quite impressive and very much so like scary. Not to mention the guy with All for One is passing the torch down to I forget his name like right now, but pretty much like all hands guy is what he's passing it down to, which I'm kind of fearful because that guy's pretty unstable, just like psychologically and everything like that. So I am looking forward to like how things kind of build as far as him being like the next All for One. And that's pretty much like where we are at right now. A lot of this was focused on just kind of defining what One for All meant and what it is, being a byproduct of All for One, but also becoming the antithesis of it. So it's going to be really interesting to see like how things pan out from here on, knowing this background information. It won't be used like very actively in the next couple episodes, I'm sure, because it's something that needed to be said, but there's not necessarily anything we can really do with that information. So it's just going to be sitting there. It's just part of the lore, but it just kind of further like makes the significance of everything just as much so. So in the next episode, it previews the final exams that everyone has, and by the looks of it, there's probably gonna be a written portion, but there's also gonna be like an actual like hero course. And by the looks of it, it seems like everyone's gonna be paired up in groups of 2, and they're gonna fight the professors, and that's gonna be very interesting to see who's getting paired by who. So that's pretty much where we're at. Yeah, this was, I would say, a solid episode. The animation was kind of spotty, but that was only for moments where it wasn't really so necessary. It was just kind of conversations just kind of happen. It was just like all about conversations and everything like that. So animation wasn't necessarily needed, except when it was needed to, especially when it came to describing All for One and One for All. That's where like the budget needed to come in, and a little bit of the racing course, a little bit of that's where the animation came in. Otherwise, this has been a pretty solid episode. I like things I liked about the episode was Lita's new resolve, because he seems a little bit normal, but there's something a little bit different about him, something that's a lot more genuine, something a lot more inspirational about him in the fact and how he approaches things, because he's now a little bit more open-minded, whereas Lita of old would probably be a little bit more closed-minded as far as like his ideals and everything like that. But people have been kind of like encouraged by Stain's like philosophy. Kaminari was kind of making the example like, you know, he's a bad guy, but he was kind of cool. And Lita actually was like, yeah, I can totally understand like his motives, everything, and his philosophy. It's just when he came down to purging people, that's where he was wrong. And so Lita takes that to heart, and he has the new resolve of how he wants to become a hero. And I think that's a really cool thing for him. I'm not sure like what he's going to be doing later on in the series, but as long as he continues to work on like his quirk and everything like that, he should be like a totally like fine I have a hard time pronouncing that name. Egnium. Sure, let's go with that. Alright, but that's pretty much it for this episode. This is, again, solid episode. I can't wait to see like how the final exams are going to be presented here. And that's pretty much it. So, without further ado, so thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next discussion on My Hero. #bye. Hopefully I won't be by myself this time.